It was a cold and rainy night when I decided to go home. The day had been long and tiring, and the only thing I wanted was to get under the covers and forget the problems that surrounded me. As I walked through the deserted streets, the sound of rain hitting the asphalt accompanied me, creating a melancholy melody that perfectly matched my mood. I only had a few coins in my pocket, enough to buy a loaf of bread and some milk for breakfast tomorrow. Life wasn't easy, and I felt like I was constantly fighting against the current. That was when, suddenly, I saw a figure lying on the ground at the foot of a lamp post. The heart raced. Approaching cautiously, I realized it was a man who appeared to be injured. At first, I hesitated. My reason told me to keep moving, not to get into problems that weren't mine. But the humanity that still existed within me was unable to ignore that silent cry for help. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, voice shaking. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he just took a deep breath, trying to stand up. His face was bruised, and I could see blood running down his temple. A strong impulse of compassion invaded me. "Leave me alone," he murmured, a little more aware now, but clearly in pain. "You need help," I insisted. "Come on, I can take you home." He looked at me with a mix of pain and suspicion, but I wasn't willing to give up. "I have nothing to offer, but I can't leave you here." With one last sigh, he agreed to go with me. With great difficulty, I managed to help him get up. The walk home was silent except for the sound of rain and his occasional groan of pain. When we arrived, I led him to the living room, where there was a worn but comfortable sofa. "Sit here. I'll get you a first aid kit." As I treated his injuries, I felt a mix of emotions. He was beautiful, even if he was hurt, and there was something in his eyes that caught my attention. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "Ethan," he replied, voice hoarse. "And you?" "Clara," I replied, trying not to be distracted by the intensity of her gaze. "What happened to you?" He hesitated, as if deciding how much he could tell me. I was robbed. I didn't expect that. The conversation flowed slowly, and as Ethan recovered, he began to share stories about his life, about the luxurious world in which he lived. He talked about dinners at expensive restaurants, trips to exotic places, and I couldn't help but daydream. At those times, the difference between our lives seemed like an abyss. While I struggled to put food on the table, he lived in a world of excess. "You seem distant," he commented, noticing my silence. "What do you do for a living?" "I take care of my family. I work a job that barely pays the bills," I confessed, feeling a heavy heart. "But honestly, I'm not here to talk about myself." "But I want to meet you," he said, and there was a sparkle in his eyes that made me feel a spark of hope. The atmosphere was charged with palpable tension, and I found myself wondering what might happen next. That night, as Ethan recovered, something began to grow between us. A feeling I couldn't ignore, even though I knew it was dangerous. The connection we were forming was unexpected and perhaps even reckless, but it was irresistible. Life had put us on such different paths, and yet here we were, together, in a modest room, sharing stories and dreams. And I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The weeks passed in the blink of an eye, but each day felt like an entire universe with Ethan. As he recovered, the house that was once just a shelter for me and my family became a space for laughter and confidence. The walls, once silent and sad, now echoed our conversations, as if they were also falling in love with that new atmosphere. One morning, as I was making breakfast, I heard Ethan approaching. He had that light way of walking, as if he were floating. "Good morning, Clara," he said with a smile that lit up the room. "Can I help you with something?" No, you still need to rest," I replied, trying to hide how nervous his presence made me. The truth is that every time he said my name, my heart accelerated, and I wondered how it was possible to feel something so strong for someone who had come into my life by accident. "You're very protective," he teased, sitting down at the table. "You know I'm not made of glass." "Maybe not, but you're still recovering. I don't want you to put in unnecessary effort." He looked at me with a gleam of admiration in his eyes. "And you don't want me to feel at home?" Those words touched me deeply. What exactly were we building? Was it a friendship or something more? The line between the two became increasingly blurred. In the following days, Ethan began to open up a little more about his life, his experiences, and his frustrations. He talked about Veronica, his wife, and how her life had become a prison. "She's a difficult person, Clara. I don't love her anymore, but I feel trapped because of everything we built together," he said, looking down, as if the confession weighed him down. "You deserve to be happy," I replied, feeling my heart sink as I imagined the pain he was probably carrying. "No one should live in a toxic relationship." He smiled slightly, as if acknowledging the truth of those words. "You are like a ray of sunshine in my life. Thank you for listening." The mood between us was changing, and it made me anxious and excited at the same time. The attraction was palpable. I could feel it in every glance and every accidental touch. One day, while organizing some things in the living room, I found a photo of Ethan with Veronica. They were at a formal event, all smiles and elegance, and the image hit me like a punch in the gut. Ethan entered the room and noticed my expression. "What happened, Clara?" "I found this," I said, holding the photo in a shaking hand. "Why didn't you tell me about her sooner?" He got closer, and the tension in the air was almost unbearable. "I didn't want to hurt you. I was trying to get away from it all." "But you're still married, Ethan. How can I trust you like that?" Indignation took over me. "I'm trying to get out of this, Clara. You don't understand how complicated this is." "Complicated?" I felt the tears building up, but I refused to let them fall. "You say you're running away, but it seems like you're still stuck with this life, this woman." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew well. "You're right. It's confusing, and I don't want to drag you into it. But what I feel for you is real. How do I know that if you can't let go of your past?" The pain in my words was undeniable. Ethan walked over, taking my hand in his. "Because I want a future with you." Those words left me breathless. Desire and doubt intertwined in my chest as I tried to process the gravity of the situation. What should I do? The truth is that, even with all my fears, I couldn't imagine my life without him. Morning light streamed in through the windows, softly illuminating my small room. I looked at Ethan, who was still sleeping on my couch, his calm expression on his face, as if the world around us didn't matter. The night before had been a whirlwind of emotions, and now, as the sun slowly rose, the weight of reality fell upon me. I felt torn, an internal battle between what my heart desired and what my reason insisted was right. I went downstairs in silence, trying not to wake him. The kitchen was cold, but the memory of the warmth of his body next to me still enveloped me. I brewed a cup of coffee, watching the smoke spiral upward as if my thoughts, too, wanted to dissipate into the air. The truth was that I was falling in love with him, something I never imagined feeling for someone who was legally married. "Clara, are you okay?" Ethan appeared at the kitchen door, his hair messy and his eyes still sleepy. The sight of him made my heart race. "Yeah, I'm just making coffee. Would you like some?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He approached, and the smell of his perfume mixed with the aroma of coffee, creating an intoxicating combination. "Sure, but only if you promise to have some too," he replied, his smile lighting up the room. Something in his gaze took my breath away, and I wondered how long I could resist him. After a moment of silence, during which the tension between us seemed almost palpable, Ethan took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "Clara, about last night. I know." The words were out of my mouth before I could think. I shouldn't have let that happen. Remorse hit me like a punch, and I pulled away, pulling his hand away. "You're married, Ethan. That changes everything." "I know." He approached, and the intensity of his gaze almost made me lose my composure again. "But I don't love Veronica. I'm here because you make me feel alive. You made me forget everything I left behind. But what if she finds out? What if she comes after you?" The agony in my voice sounded like an echo. The thought of Veronica in my house, confronting me, terrified me. I can't live in fear anymore. "I can't go back to that unhappy marriage," he said, the determination in his voice palpable. "But you need to understand that I can't just disappear. Veronica has too much power, and I can't risk putting you in danger. I don't want you to feel trapped by me, Ethan." Tears began to form in my eyes, and I quickly wiped them away. "I'm not a solution to your problems." "You're not a solution, Clara. You're the only thing that makes me want to fight for a new life." He looked me in the eyes, and for an instant, the world around us disappeared. It was just the two of us, wrapped up in a bubble of desire and uncertainty. I don't know what to do," I mumbled. "I don't want to be the reason you get hurt anymore." "You won't be. I choose that. And I want to choose you." His gaze was so sincere that my heart almost gave way. But the fear still remained, like a shadow that wouldn't leave me. At that moment, the phone rang. The thunderous sound broke the magic between us, and, for a second, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if the universe was alerting me to what was about to happen. "I need to answer it," I said, trying to maintain my composure as I walked away. My heart was beating fast, and I knew the conversation I was about to have could change everything. I answered, and the voice on the other end was familiar, but also full of urgency. "Clara, it's Veronica. I need to talk to you. It's about Ethan." I felt a knot in my stomach. What she wanted. My gaze met Ethan's, who was observing the scene with a worried expression. What would I say to her? What would I say to him? The conflict within me became more and more intense, and I knew that the life I had begun to dream of was about to be dismantled. Morning light invaded my small apartment, but the sense of peace that usually accompanied daylight was absent. My heart was beating fast in my chest, as if anticipating a catastrophic event. I woke up before Ethan, watching him sleep next to me. He looked so vulnerable, with the features of a man who, under normal circumstances, could have everything, and yet here he was, taking refuge in my home, in my life. What was about to happen made me uneasy. The memory of Veronica, his wife, hung over me like a dark cloud. I got up carefully, trying not to wake him, and went to the kitchen. As I made coffee, my mind raced with possibilities. What would you do if Veronica arrived? What if Ethan decided to come back to her? The idea of losing what we had started to build made me tense. The noise of the coffee machine seemed to resonate at a rapid pace, as if it were reflecting my emotional state. When I finally brought the cup to the table, Ethan was already awake, watching me with a sleepy smile. He looked so beautiful, with his hair messy and his eyes still heavy with sleep. "Good morning," he said, in a hoarse voice, and my heart skipped a beat at the response. "Good morning," I murmured, trying to hide the anxiety that was building in my stomach. "Did you make coffee?" he asked, leaning over to pick up the cup. "Yes, it's the least I can do." I smiled, but I couldn't hide the tension in my eyes. "Everything is fine?" "You look worried," he noticed, and his expression became serious. I'm thinking about Veronica. What are you going to do when she arrives?" The question came out before I could think twice. He sighed, placing his cup on the table. "I don't know, Clara. I don't want to go back to her, But the situation is complicated. He looked into my eyes, searching for an answer I didn't have. How complicated? I insisted, feeling a pang of insecurity. She's not just my wife. She is also my business partner. Leaving her would mean not only losing the life I know, but also risking everything, he replied, his voice thick with frustration. So, you're saying you'd rather be stuck in an unhappy marriage? My voice came out harsher than I intended. No, that's not it. He stood up, running a hand through his hair in an exasperated gesture. It's just, I can't just abandon everything. It's not easy. Before I could respond, I heard a noise in the hallway. My heart stopped. The door was closed, but a feeling of impending disaster came over me. Did you hear that? I asked, with a lump in my throat. What it was? Ethan frowned, worried. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, echoing through the small apartment. The sound seemed to resonate like a warning. It's her, Ethan exclaimed, with a tone of panic in his voice. What do we do? I asked, trying to stay calm, but my body was shaking. I need to talk to her, he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Ethan, you can't. I begged, a chill running down my spine. You can't just open the door for her after everything that's happened. I can't ignore it. It's a serious matter, he replied, his expression undecided. The doorbell rang again, now more insistent. The sound was like a hammer hitting my heart. You do not understand, I said, almost shouting. She won't stop until she gets what she wants. So, what do you suggest? He questioned, frustrated. I suggest you don't let her in. May you choose me, Ethan. The last sentence came out as a whisper, almost a desperate request. He hesitated, looking at the door. The doorbell continued to ring, like an echo of our uncertainties. Time seemed to stop. The tension between us was palpable, and I knew that no matter what decision he made, nothing would be the same. The air was thick in the room when Veronica entered, her features contorted in a mix of anger and determination. I was frozen, watching Ethan, who found himself at the center of an emotional turmoil. Her presence was like an extra weight, a constant reminder of everything that was at stake. What I didn't expect, however, was what she would bring with her. Ethan, his voice cut through the silence, cold as steel. You need to see this. She held up an envelope, her hands shaking slightly, but her expression was one of absolute control. This is the will you feared so much. If you don't come back to me, you will have nothing. Not a penny. You know I'm not kidding. My heart raced. Those words sounded like a warning, a cry for help that reverberated inside me. I looked at Ethan, searching for an answer, a reaction, anything. But he seemed frozen, his eyes fixed on the paper Veronica held. Veronica, you can't do this, he murmured, but there was a hesitation in his voice that sent a chill down my spine. I can and I will, she replied firmly. You were always a fool, Ethan. Did you think you could run away from your life? Your responsibility? Now, either you go home or you lose everything. You decide. I couldn't contain my indignation. It was like a fire was burning inside me, and I needed to speak. Veronica, you have no right to do this. What you are doing is cruel. Ethan deserves to be happy. The words escaped my lips before I could think better, and Veronica's eyes fixed on me, full of contempt. And who are you to talk about happiness? She turned to me, anger emanating from her like a miasma. You are just an ordinary woman, a simple peasant who dared to dream of what she cannot have. He cannot live in a world of illusions. I'm the only one who's been fighting for him, while you've trapped him in a toxic marriage. I retorted. My heart was racing, but the adrenaline gave me courage. You don't love Ethan, you control him. He is not your luxury object. Ethan looked dazed, his emotions conflicted. Clara, please, he started, but I didn't want to stop. I needed to defend what was beginning to form between us, something I never imagined possible. Ethan, you need to decide, I said, turning to him. You can't let her decide for you. You deserve to be happy, even if it means losing everything. Veronica stepped forward, her gaze fierce. What if I sue him? What if I make sure you pay for this insolence? You don't know who you're dealing with. I'm not afraid of you, I replied, feeling bravery rising within me. You may have money, but that doesn't give you the right to destroy someone else's life. Ethan is not your property. Ethan looked at me, his eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and pain. Clara, I don't know what to do. My heart is divided. Then listen to your heart, Ethan, I pleaded. Don't let the fear of what you might lose stop you from fighting for what you really want. The tension in the room was palpable. Veronica, furious, seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. Do you really think you can keep him? That you can save it? You are living in a fairy tale. What if that's true? I challenged. If he wants to live this fairy tale, you can't continue to manipulate his life. He is a man, not a toy. Ethan's gaze was fixed on me, and for a moment, the anger and frustration in the room seemed to dissipate, giving way to something deeper. I could see he was fighting against the chains Veronica had placed around him, and it gave me hope. Veronica, I can't go back to you, he finally said, his voice firmer. I'm not that man anymore, and I can't live like this. The silence that followed was deafening. The words floated in the air, and for a brief moment, anything seemed possible. Veronica seemed to have lost some of her confidence. You don't know what you're saying, she replied, but there was a weakness in her voice. I approached Ethan, holding his hand. Don't be scared, Ethan. You are stronger than this. And when I looked into her eyes, I realized that we were about to enter a battlefield where love and freedom were at stake, and I was willing to fight until the end. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, almost palpable. The silence after the confrontation with Veronica felt like a distant echo as I tried to process what had happened. Ethan was there, standing still, with an expression that mixed determination and doubt. I knew that moment could change everything between us. Clara, he began, his voice thick with emotion. I can't go back to her. I can't live stuck in this marriage that never made sense to me. What we have is real. I feel this, and I can't let my life continue to be a lie. I looked into his eyes, searching for the sincerity I had always admired. But what about fortune, Ethan? And everything you've achieved? Are you willing to give up all of this for me? He took a deep breath, as if preparing for a battle. True wealth is not in money or property. It's about being free, about loving and being loved. And I choose you, Clara. I choose freedom. His words were like a balm for my soul, but doubt still hung in the air. Veronica was still there, the expression of anger and despair on her face. You're making a colossal mistake, Ethan. Are you willing to throw everything away for a woman who is nothing? You know this isn't going to end well. Her anger was almost palpable, like a poison spreading throughout the room. Enough, Veronica. I didn't know where the courage came from, but the words came out of me like a scream. You can't control his life anymore. He is not your prisoner. She looked at me, surprised by my boldness. You don't know who you're dealing with, Clara. You don't know what I'm capable of. And I don't care anymore. I was tired of being bullied. If you have any dignity, you should understand that what you are doing is wrong. Ethan has the right to choose his own life. Silence fell again, but this time there was a different tension in the air. Ethan approached me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Thanks. You don't know how much this means to me. Veronica, furious, took the will she had brought, holding it as if it were a weapon. You're going to regret this, Ethan. I'm not just your wife. I'm your only chance to keep what you've achieved. You can't leave me like this. I can't keep living a lie, Veronica. This is not love. That's control. The determination in Ethan's voice was growing stronger. He seemed to finally free himself from the constraints that his relationship with Veronica had imposed on him for so long. If you think leaving me will be easy, you are very mistaken. I will fight for everything that is mine, and you will find yourself at rock bottom. Her words resonated in the room, but something inside me lit up. I won't let you do this, Veronica. What you have done to Ethan is unacceptable, and I will not allow you to manipulate him any longer. Ethan looked at me, his eyes full of gratitude. Clara, you don't have to do that. Yes, I need. The conviction in my voice was clear. I will return this will to her. You can't feel tied to anything that comes from it. With a firm gesture, I took the document from Veronica's hands and faced her. It means nothing without love, and you know it. Veronica was paralyzed, perhaps surprised by my act of courage. You cannot do that. I just did. I smiled, feeling a wave of relief and freedom. And now, Ethan, it's time for both of us to move on. He held my hand, eyes shining with new understanding. What we were facing wasn't just a battle against Veronica, but a fight for a future we both deserved. Finally, the door opened and we walked out together, ready to face the world, without secrets, without lies, and most importantly, free from each other.